What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to the latest and greatest episode of the Richard Watkins podcast. I'd like to first start off by thanking each and every one of you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We started this podcast in order to learn more about the world that we live in, the society that we operate in, but what we ended up doing was creating a awesome podcast that folks like you are able to benefit from and leave from learning a little bit more. Now, last week we had an incredible episode in which we interviewed the director of communications for the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Research at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Layla Dowdy. That was an amazing interview in which she was able to talk to us about the ins and outs of science communication, but also talk to us about how she made it to where she is now, from high school student to an undergraduate to her first internship, now leading communication efforts from one of the world's premier scientific enterprises and institutions, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But that was the first episode of season two of the Richard Watkins podcast. And we wanted to actually start off that podcast with what we are going to do today. But that episode was so awesome that we went ahead and aired it as the premiere for season two. But we wanted to start season two just like we started season one, by saying hello and reintroducing ourselves. So we'll start right there. My name is Richard Watkins. I am the host of the Richard Watkins podcast. We film it right here and release episodes every single Friday. And so we're really excited. If you want to check out other episodes of the Richard Watkins podcast, please check out all the videos recorded and available for you to stream on Facebook at the Science Policy Action Network Incorporated Facebook page, or you can check out all the episodes on the Science Policy Action Network Incorporated YouTube page. Check out all the episodes right there, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, or if you happen to follow me on LinkedIn at Richard Watkins, you can see all of those episodes posted there as well. Now, the first season was incredible. We started off conversations by talking about the air that we breathe and how exhaust and how combustibles and all the things that we put into the air form particulates that we then breathe in, and how those particulates impact our health. Now, I know many people didn't know any of this. In fact, I didn't know these things, and this was our first episode. So that was really exciting. We went on to talk about artificial intelligence. Now, we're going to revisit that topic several times, by the way. But we had our second episode about artificial intelligence, and we got computer scientists from NC State University in to talk about that. Check that episode out as well. It was absolutely incredible. And that episode was really focused on how someone gets into computer science, what is artificial intelligence, and how we should be thinking about it. And since then, that was like almost a year ago, the landscape of AI has changed dramatically. What we were talking about then is antiquated compared to what we need to talk about now, because technology develops so quickly. We talked about environmental justice. We talked about the psychology that's wrapped around sports. And as an athlete myself, or a former athlete, I know all about that impact that athletics has on the mind, on psychology, how an athlete thinks about themselves, and how they overcome injuries. That was a huge one. The one about environmental justice was huge as well, talking about the wetlands and indigenous peoples, and who has rights over the lands, and how are those lands protected and advocated for. That was an incredible episode. But we bring in thought leaders from all over the place, including spaces of policy creation. So we brought in representatives from the education sector to talk about the role that education plays and how we can work together to improve education. That was incredible. We also spoke a little bit about what you can do and what you should be thinking about when thinking about education, specifically public education, K through 12. So that was an awesome, awesome conversation. Oh, I really enjoyed our conversation with State Representative Alan Boyncy. That was an incredible conversation. Um, a lot of times we kind of take for granted our policymakers and we don't really know the ins and outs of what they do. But that conversation shed light on legislation and how legislation is created and motivations of policymakers to devote their life to public service and what that looks like. Uh, so we talked about state government, but we also talked about municipal government. We had a city council member come in and talk to us, but we also talked about government at the county level because we had a county commissioner, newly elected county commissioner, as a guest. So we have been just incredibly, incredibly fortunate. We don't pour that much into the production of this show. But we really hang our hat on are the quality of guests. The people that we bring onto the show create the legislation, create the technologies and the innovations that impact our entire life. This week is a big week. This week is a big week. Episode 2, season 2, Richard Watkins podcast. But also, my birthday was this week. My birthday was this week. Yes, indeed. I turned the big 40 years old. That's really, really huge. But I think that's not necessarily the coolest birthday that we are recognizing. My birthday, 40 years old, is all right. But the birthday I really want to give a huge shout out to is the birthday of the Science Policy Action Network, premier consulting firm, right there at the intersection of innovation and action. Uh, as a consulting firm, the Science Policy Action Network is very proud of the clients that we serve, and we're a year old, and we've done some really amazing things. And so while we sit here recognizing and celebrating 1 year of existence, we also look forward to what the next year may bring. A lot of opportunities for us to serve, a lot of opportunities for us to bring our expertise, our acumen to bear in service of society, community, and our clients. So we are really, really excited about that. We've got a lot of things. I'm involved with a lot of things. I know I'll be speaking at the North Carolina Science Leadership conference. I'll be talking more about that. We'll be bringing in a representative from that organization to talk to you all. We're excited about the work that we are able to do with postdocs, with the Postdoctoral Association. You'll hear more about that as we go forward. Also, really huge shout out to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's chapter of Sigma Xi. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of that chapter, and it's absolutely amazing. Last year, we had an opportunity to host the Pariser Global Lecture. Now, that was in October, and the Pariser Global Lecturer was none other than Dr. Kim Boudil. Now, Dr. Kim Boudil is the director of Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, and she delivered, and I've seen thousands of scientific talks. She delivered probably the best scientific talk presentation that I have ever seen. On one hand, the subject, nuclear fusion and the breakthroughs in ignition at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories was huge. It was probably one of the greatest technological, scientific breakthroughs in human history, right? We'll come back to that in a little bit. But in addition to that, it was probably the best delivered scientific presentation that I had ever seen. So here I am sitting there looking at this presentation, phenomenal presentation. And the subject was, nuclear fusion and the breakthroughs that Lawrence Livermore Laboratory um, were able to achieve in nuclear fusion. I was sitting there, and after the presentation, I really was trying to wrap my mind around what I just saw. I felt like I was sitting, listening to, I can't really explain it. I think I was listening to someone tell me that the world is going to change forever, right? Before it actually, does. Because just to put it bluntly, the breakthrough at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory has the potential to end or solve all of our energy needs. I'm just gonna let that sit there for just a little bit. It has the potential to solve all of our energy needs. And that's a heavy statement. I don't know what it means for a society to have created a technology to end our energy needs, our energy wants, to have all of our energy solutions. Now, we're far away from that, right? We don't have that yet, but it has the potential to end all of our needs for energy. That's incredible. That's incredible. And if I'm using words or terms that you're not familiar with, let's put it like this. We created a star. And we, I mean humans, right? Uh, that was done by Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, created a star. And that's huge. For centuries, right? We as humans have worshiped stars. We've worshiped the sun. We have created constellations as a way to honor deities, people, and things, right? Stars are the pinnacle of power in many regards. And so, what does it mean to have created a star? I think that is written in a story that is being told as time goes by. So, as the saying goes, only time can tell. So that's just really just absolutely remarkable. And in regards to our huge breakthroughs in computing and AI and technology, which requires so much energy, coupling that with a huge breakthrough that will ameliorate all of our energy needs, it just means that everything is possible. Everything is possible in regards to computing. Everything is possible in regards to energy production. It's just a huge, huge thing. And so that was last year's. That was our first Paraser Global Lecture Series that was hosted and put on by the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's chapter of Sigma Xi. And so while I was sitting there just floored by what I just heard, I immediately became haunted by the singular thought. Well, how do we top that? That was the greatest presentation that I ever seen. How in the world do we top the creation of a star? Which, by the way, is a huge thing. One of the biggest stories is geneticist Eric Lander starting a fusion company. I think the company's name is Pacific Fusion. I might be wrong, but I think that's somehow in collaboration with Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. And so you will soon hear a lot about this as time goes by. It might take 2, 3 years before you really hear about it or see it covered by the news, but understand you're going to hear it here first. Please, if you want to hear about things before they happen, right? If you want to be on the bleeding edge of innovation, yeah, come right here to the Richard Watkins podcast. We have you covered. We'll have you covered. Whether it's talking about policies or so on and so forth, right here is where you want to be. All right. How will we top that? Well, we were able to. But I unfortunately am not going to tell you who we've locked in as the next Paris or Global Lecturer. But trust and believe it is going to be incredible. If the first Paris or Global Lecturer talked about how we created a star, use your imagination to try and figure out who we are going to talk about or what we are going to talk about at the next Paris or Global Lecture, which will be in October of 2025. So stay tuned. We are going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about going forward. We're going to talk about aviation. We're going to bring that in. We're going to touch on comp sci, computer science, artificial intelligence, and what that means at all capacities of our society, and what new areas of our society are going to be created by these newly emerging innovations and technologies. We're going to talk about genetics. And we're going to continue to bring in the top policymakers from around the country to really kind of talk about how legislation, again, is created, what they are thinking about, how are they focusing on the society that is changing? How are they thinking about innovations that are rapidly changing? Again, I've said this before and I'll say it again, and I can't say it enough that the level of impact that innovation has on society, and we can talk about over the next 10 years, right? So the level of impact that innovation will have on society over the next 10 years will be greater than the level of impact that innovation has had on society for the past 1,000 years. Let me just say that one more time. The level of impact that innovation has on our society, right? So the level of impact that innovation will have on our society over the next 10 years will surpass the level of impact that innovation has had on our society past 1,000 years. Things that we are blown away by, things that we see now that drops our jaws to the floor, it's only the tip. It's only the tip of the iceberg. We haven't seen anything yet. We haven't seen anything yet. So brace yourselves and get ready um, for all the changes that are coming. To be aware of all of these things and how they will impact you, make sure you tune in to the Richard Watkins podcast each and every single Friday, as we'll be bringing the latest information to you from the bleeding edge of innovation. We're going to bring right here to your computer screen through conversations and interviews the world's greatest minds in both policy and innovation. You'll get these conversations nowhere else, right here on the Richard Watkins podcast, proudly brought to you by the Science Policy Action Network Incorporated. If you have any questions, if you have any troubles or trying to seize opportunities, right? And you need information, research, input from stakeholders, the Science Policy Action Network is your consultant firm. Please reach out to us at info@span-inc.org. Check out our website at www.span-inc.org. Visit us at Facebook, of course, at the Science Policy Action Network Incorporated. Check us out on YouTube at the Science Policy Action Network Incorporated. Follow me at LinkedIn, Richard Watkins. This time that we are living in is unlike any time that any people have ever lived in. It's a mistake to assume that we've been here before because we have not. It'll also be a mistake to think that we can employ all the lessons from the past and deploy them in the present and expect positive outcomes. That is just a fool's errand. To tackle the challenges and the situations and the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and to take advantage of all the opportunities as they present themselves, we are going to have to enlist new pools of knowledge. We're going to have to tap into new reservoirs of understanding, and we're going to have to create new knowledge. I hear the word research thrown around all the time, but let us be very, very clear. There are two forms of research, one in which you, you solve whatever gap that you have in your understanding, right? As you deal with your own ignorance and pull from bodies of understanding that already exist. That's one form of research. Do it. You have to. That's not the biggest form of research. The biggest form of research is a form of research in which you create knowledge that has never existed before. You create understanding that has never existed before. You bring something new to the world. And it's that form of research, the new, the fresh, that I try to bring to you here today. So learn more, do better, be smarter, and understand that the Science Policy Action Network, our focus isn't waiting for the future, isn't describing the present. For the future is not something to be waited for. The future is something to build. I am Dr. Richard Watkins, host of the Richard Watkins podcast. I was so very excited to spend this time with you. Make sure you have a safe, wonderful week. Take care. Until next time, get smarter. Take care, everyone.